At Yale University he excelled both in sports and in his studies. He was captain of the baseball team and a member of Phi Beta Kappa. After graduation, Bush embarked on a career in the oil industry of West Texas. Like his father, Prescott Bush, who was elected a senator from Connecticut in 1952, he became interested in public service and politics. He served 2 terms as a representative to Congress from Texas. Twice he ran unsuccessfully for the Senate. There he was appointed to a series of high-level positions: ambassador to the United Nations, chairman of the Republican National Committee, chief of the U.S. Liaison Office in the People's Republic of China, and director of the Central Intelligence Agency. In 1980, Bush campaigned for the Republican nomination for president. He lost, but was chosen as a running mate by Ronald Reagan. As vice president, Bush had responsibility in several domestic areas, including federal deregulation and anti-drug programs, and visited scores of foreign countries. In 1988, Bush won the Republican nomination for president and, with Senator Dan Quayle of Indiana as his running mate, he defeated Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis in the general election. Bush faced a dramatically changing world. As the Cold War ended after 40 bitter years, the Communist Empire broke up, and the Berlin Wall fell. The Soviet Union ceased to exist. And reformist President Mikhail Gorbachev, whom Bush had supported, resigned. While Bush hailed the march of democracy, he insisted on restraint in U.S. policy toward the group of new nations. In other areas of foreign policy, President Bush sent American troops into Panama to overthrow the corrupt regime of General Manuel Noriega, who was threatening the security of the canal, and the Americans living there. Noriega was brought to the United States for trial as a drug trafficker. Bush's greatest test came when Iraqi President Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, then threatened to move into Saudi Arabia. Vowing to free Kuwait, Bush rallied the United Nations, the U.S. people, and Congress and sent 425,000 American troops. They were joined by 118,000 troops from allied nations. After weeks of air and missile bombardment, the 100-hour land battle dubbed Desert Storm routed Iraq's million-man army. Despite unprecedented popularity from this military and diplomatic triumph, Bush was unable to withstand discontent at home from a faltering economy, rising violence in inner cities, and continued high-deficit spending. In 1992 he lost his bid for re-election to Democrat William Clinton. George W. Bush is the 43rd President of the United States. He was sworn into office January 20, 2001. President Bush served for 6 years as the 46th governor of the state of Texas, where he earned a reputation as a compassionate conservative who shaped public policy based on the principles of limited government, personal responsibility, strong families, and local control. President Bush was born on July 6, 1946, in New Haven, Connecticut, and he grew up in Midland and Houston, Texas. He received a bachelor's degree from Yale University in 1968, then served as an F-102 fighter pilot in the Texas Air National Guard. President Bush received a Master of Business Administration from Harvard Business School in 1975. After graduating, he moved back to Midland, and began a career in the energy business. After working on his father's successful 1988 presidential campaign, he assembled the group of partners that purchased the Texas Rangers baseball franchise in 1989. He served as managing general, partner of the Texas Rangers, until he was elected governor on November 8, 1994, with 53.5% of the vote. He became the first governor in Texas history to be elected to consecutive 4-year terms when he was re-elected on November 3, 1998, with 68.6% of the vote. President Bush is married to Laura Welch Bush, a former teacher and librarian, and they have twin daughters, Barbara and Jenna. Before we can go any further with the Bush family, we've now got to understand another family that isn't as familiar to you, and their name is Warburg. This by far is at the same time one of the most incredible families in history, in that 2 brothers, both Warburgs, were responsible, and at the same time, for the financing of both sides during World War II. That's right, you didn't read this wrong. Paul Warburg, head of the United States Federal Reserve, and an advisor to President Roosevelt, financed the United States and its allies. At the same time, his brother, Max Warburg, financed Nazi Germany and its allies. A quick examination of Paul Warburg's crucial role in establishing the Federal Reserve Bank shows also that he was intimately acquainted with European central banks, especially the Reichsbank. Paul didn't claim to originate new banking principles, so much as import European practices. As with Max, Paul's older brother in Hamburg, Paul meshed spectacularly with his historical moment. Once again, a Warburg succeeded, because of his contradictory status. As a Jew in a Gentile world, a German immigrant confronting a new country, Paul was able to spot flaws in American finance, to which native bankers had been blinded by familiarity. Along with many other bankers, Paul Warburg was unhappy with the risk inherent in America's decentralized banking system. The central bank he envisioned for the United States, I would insure against future panics and do away with much of the risk of banking. To this end, he played a key but secretive role in this project.